I hope we're all getting through the insanity and the craziness of 2022. God bless the souls of those children yesterday. Facebook can definitely block that. So anyways, I'm going to share a video that I shared last night, and then we're going to go right into the FLCCC starting their eye recovery protocol for post-vaccine injury. A lot of things people just aren't going to understand at the moment, but I'm going to let the people speak for themselves, because I've had to see this for 2 years in all these rooms, and I know it's a family, a friend, a loved one. I know it has to be someone related to you, because the odds are of people who are suffering this are about 1 in 6 that we know of. So listen.
10 minutes is what changed my and my family's life. 10 minutes. I'm a shell of what I was.
I laid in the hospital for 5 days with no help. And I would be begging them, please help me.
It is not ethical that they sent me home with a walker and an order for a potty chair.
And I'm gonna show you what it looks like to have an injury and what I have to deal with every single day.
My heart is so broken. I can't keep quiet anymore. This is a humanitarian crisis. These people are suffering. This is real disease.
There has to be a recognition of vaccine injury. There are no vaccine injury clinics, and we know there's an epidemic of vaccine injuries. I mean, these are the most toxic medical interventions known to man.
There are millions of people who are suffering. They're being ignored, they're not getting treatment, and they're suffering. We know exactly what their diagnosis is. I know exactly what it is. I know what it's caused by, and I know how to treat it.
Humanity can take away that pain. Morality can take away that pain, because what has happened to us is inhumane, and it's not moral at all.
The NIH said this isn't for COVID. So that's why we put the FLCCC together. And now we're doing the same thing for the vaccine injured, because nobody wants to treat them. So you know what? We will treat them.
It could be you. It could be your mother. It could be your child.
So what is ethics? Ethics is 4 words. Do the right thing. That is what ethics is.
So that is, they're actually playing it again as we speak. Hold on, I'm going to turn this up.
And an order for a potty chair.
I'm gonna show you what it looks like to have an injury and what I have to deal with every single day.
My heart is so broken. I can't keep quiet anymore. This is a humanitarian crisis. These people are suffering. This is real disease.
There has to be a recognition of vaccine injury. There are no vaccine injury clinics, and we know there's an epidemic of vaccine injuries. I mean, these are the most toxic medical interventions known to man.
There are millions of people who are suffering. They're being ignored, they're not getting treatment, and they're suffering. We know exactly what their diagnosis is. I know exactly what it is. I know what it's caused by, and I know how to treat it.
Humanity can take away that pain. Morality can take away that pain, because what has happened to us is inhumane, and it's not moral at all.
The NIH said there's no treatment for COVID. So that's why we put the FLCCC together. And now we're doing the The same thing for the vaccine injured, because nobody wants to treat them. So you know what? We will treat them.
It could be you. It could be your mother. It could be your child. So what is ethics? Ethics is 4 words. Do the right thing. That is what ethics is. Yes, folks, we are here tonight to do the right thing, to try our best to help people who are suffering from something that's relatively new, that was not present in the beginning of the COVID pandemic when our doctors focused on saving lives and limiting suffering from COVID-19 using the medicines that were available. They had studied, they knew how to use, and they used with great success. Now they're seeing a growing number of patients with serious adverse effects from the experimental vaccines promoted as COVID prevention. And they've worked long and hard doing what good doctors have always done, studying with the issues presented and comparing notes and sharing what they've learned with respected physicians and what they know works, putting it out there to help other physicians alleviate those symptoms in their patients. Tonight, we are sharing with you their new protocol that they put together to help doctors everywhere better understand how to help return their patients to good health. Welcome to the FLCCC Weekly Update. I'm Betsy Ashton. I'm the Creative Director of the Alliance. And I want to give a special welcome to thousands of new viewers who are here live streaming us on new platforms. Welcome. And I want you all to know that 4 of our top nurses are working behind the scenes throughout this program to answer the questions that you text into Q&A. But you should also know that our top doctors, Pierre Corey and Paul Marek, will also answer some of the questions after they finish telling you about the new protocol and what they're seeing and what they're doing to treat the post-vaccine syndrome, as well as talk to some of the patients that are here tonight. So, without further ado, Paul and Pierre, tell us what you learned.
Evening.
Hi, Paul.
Hey, Pierre. So we're on, Paul. How do we want to do this? You want me to go with I mean, just up on the
Why don't
screen.
we do the slides and then we can talk?
Okay, sounds good.
I'm trying to get this on
Okay,
a couple
so
lives.
as usual, see how efficient and quick we are. How's that, folks? Can you see my slides?
Oh, there, now we do.
Perfect. So, Paul, I'll do the first few, and then when it gets to really deep stuff, I'll hand it over to you.
And once it gets more complicated for you.
As we usually do. So tonight we're going to talk about not a protocol per se. It really is a guideline, a strategy, sort of a suggestive strategy to approach what is a very complex disease. We brought in a lot of help for this. You can see the faces on the screen. You might recognize a bunch of them. I don't know if I think we have that listed on the protocol, but we have actually many people that know Dr. Bean and Flavio and Robin Rose, who works with Keith Berkowitz. We have Suzanne Garzda, really senior expert neurologist. Tina Piers, an expert at mast cell activation syndrome. Dr. Salibi, Eugene Shippen, and of course Fred Wadchill and Meryl Nass. And so we really had a number of collaborative meetings, and it was. I got to tell you, we had our protocol or sort of management strategies fleshed out. They've been rapidly evolving, and the more we collaborate, the more we learn, and I think the more impactful this approach is going to be. I think for our audience, it probably goes without saying, but let's talk about some of the data. Just in the Pfizer data alone, and we know that is severely underreported. I don't want to go into all the shenanigans that happened with Pfizer and how messy those trials were. But even in the the detritus or the dust left over, there was 1 to 1.5% of them who developed severe or serious adverse events. And when you look at VAERS, right, just in the United States, right, VAERS actually has some international reports, but just in the United States, you have 815,000 adverse events. 151 of them are serious, and 5,300 cases of myocarditis.
Hey, Pierre, sorry to interrupt. We're only seeing the front page right now. Are you switching pages? Because I'm not seeing
I am.
The cover page.
I am switching. It's a PDF. I don't know how to do that. My screen sharing is paused. Why is that paused? Let me stop sharing. Let me start again. Maybe it's because it's a PDF. I usually do slides. Let me see.
I have it, so if it doesn't work this time, I can do it and follow you.
All right, tell me if you're seeing something now. Sorry, but I'm glad you interrupted, though, because I have a ton of windows open. What are you guys seeing now? It still says my screen sharing is paused. Oh, resume share?
This has started
what happens in
screen
live.
sharing. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Mine is saying it's paused. You want to just put your slides up, Livia?
Guys,
And then I'll just ask you to do the next slide.
trying to get this thing so you guys can see it.
There they are. They're all
As they're
listed.
doing it.
Great. Next slide. So yeah, this is the numbers that I was telling you guys. 14,000 deaths. And remember, the only thing that I keep saying is there's only one problem with VAERS. It has severe underreporting, right? I mean, to put in a report in VAERS, it takes a half an hour of continuous time. You can't save and go back later. We know these are ridiculously underreported. So what you're seeing is just the tip of the iceberg of what's out there. And we're seeing it clinically, at least those of us who actually know and understand that this is a real syndrome and are treating it. Next slide, Livia. And, like I said in that sort of opening video, which was really, really moving, and Paul's words, I think, have sort of resonated with everybody. I mean, I don't even know what to say about them, but it is a humanitarian disaster. And they are not being served by the medical system. And, not that we're heroes or anything, we're just plain doctors who know disease and know when people are suffering. And the patients that we see have extensive symptom burden. They are suffering greatly. They are being, and I hate the word, but I'm going to use it, they're being gaslighted. Every patient I see in my practice has, the first 5 minutes of the visit, they have to tell me about their history, and it's nothing but repeated visits to the establishment medical system, and they all leave with the diagnosis of anxiety. And then it extends beyond that. The journals we know are selectively publishing data for certain purposes, not only on early treatment benefits, but also on this idea that there is a vaccine injury syndrome. So, tonight, and Paul's document, which is going to be on our website, 150 references, and I want to give a big shout out to Paul. I mean, he was very moved by what was going on, and he took the lead, and he put together really just a master overview of everything that we know using what the literature shows. And even though there's 150 references, there should be 500. And they're mostly pathophysiology papers. There really is there are no therapeutic trials. Well, actually, there's maybe a few that have been done, but you don't hear them publicized. And we've informed our treatment approach with whatever we could find, what we learn on the ground and what we learn from the literature. And the thing is that this syndrome is so complex. There are multiple mechanisms going on. In every patient, there's multiple mechanisms. Some mechanisms predominate in some and not in others. And we're finding that treatments work. Like Paul said, there's no disease that we can't treat. We are definitely treating and helping patients. But it's so challenging because what works in one patient or in a whole cluster of patients, you'll go to your next one and it doesn't work in that one. And so a lot of what we're doing is empiric trial and error, and we're learning from others, and we're leaning on collaborators and clinicians, and many of whom have been treating complex chronic diseases for a long time. And so, we're reaching out to them. And I will tell you, what you learned tonight, if we did this again in 3 months, it would be markedly different. And we will, committed to doing updates. Next slide, Livia. This is the other challenge, right? Everybody knows every disease ever known to man, early treatment is always better than late treatment. And the problem is in order to find a provider who has knowledge and experience and is willing to recognize, diagnose, and treat post-vaccine syndromes, in many people, it takes months. There have been people suffering for a year trying to find a provider who is willing to listen and put together a reasonable, pragmatic treatment plan. And like I said, like we have what we think are foundational therapies that work in most and that are based on the most sound pathophysiologic mechanisms as well as pharmacology. And most of them are absolutely safe. But they don't work in everyone. Sometimes we have to go to second and even third lines. And now there are some emerging therapies that have really great mechanisms. We just don't have enough experience with them, but we are going to gain it. And I will tell you that, some of the stuff that we have ordered in first and second line, within months, I think we're going to be shifting some of those priorities as we get more clinical experience. And then I hope it goes without saying, but I think there's like these couple of anecdotal case reports, or some people say, oh, I got the vaccine and it helped my prior vaccine symptoms or long haul symptoms. That is absolute nonsense. These things are so toxic. You cannot try what we know is to be one of history's greatest toxins in an attempt to try to treat this. And or anyone who's sick already from the vaccine should not get a vaccine, period. Next slide. And this is where it gets complicated, Paul. So this is where I'm going to hand off to you, my friend. I just did a little intro.
Yeah, thanks, Pierre. So what we wanted to do is make this simple so that it applies to the biggest cohort of vaccine injured patients, because unfortunately there are practitioners out there who take advantage of patients and will do an extensive battery of tests. And basically, most of these tests really don't help the patient. There's the dictum, you only do a test if it's going to change what you do. If it's not going to change what you do, then don't do the test. And the test should also be directed somewhat against the patient's symptomatology. Next slide. So, before we get into this, I think just a few points need to be made. Firstly, this is a real disease. This is real disease. These patients have real pathology, and we can detect it. And unfortunately, many of these patients get dismissed as being anxious or stressed or neurotic, and that they don't recognize that they have real disease. The problem is many of the tests that are done come back normal. So because they come back normal, they assume that the patients, there's nothing wrong with them.
And Paul, can I make a point on that? I think we complete each other's sentence and repeat each other a lot, but I just want to emphasize, like, it's uncanny. All of the headwinds that are burying and creating barriers to effective treatment for the post-vaccine. That point you just made is so incredibly unfortunate, which is, the medical system, I believe the medical system does really well at what I call bread and butter diagnoses, where there's a classic symptom. There are defined tests with defined abnormalities, and when you have a symptom, a good test, and an abnormality, and a patient what we call falls out of a textbook, the system does pretty well. When diseases get complex, or they're novel, or they present in myriad atypical fashions, it really flummoxes doctors. They're kind of, nowadays, especially in modern medicine, Paul accuses me of this, they're taught somewhat cookbook, without thinking openly and pathophysiologically. And the thing about these tests is, even in those baseline testing, early on, we know some of them are abnormal, but once you've had someone who's sick for months, D-dimers are normal, CRPs are normal, which measure inflammation. Patients can have uncontrollable motor movements and twitching and convulsions, and yet they're still awake. The EEGs, which measure electrical activity in the brain, they don't pick up anything. And so the doctors are saying there's nothing wrong with your test, so there's nothing wrong with you.
I have my QEEG done plenty of times.
And it's horrible. They don't understand that a lot of these abnormalities are arising from what I would say subdiagnostic or subclinical sources. So there's inflammation going on. There's a whole bunch of mechanisms, which is Paul going to talk about, but they're not rising to the level that you, on standard testing, it really helps guide a doctor. And that's part of the reason why they're being failed. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, the other point is the number of patients. So we estimate, and obviously we don't know because it's a disease that the CDC, NIH, WHO don't recognize, there's no ICD-9 code. So we really don't know. But we suspect 1.5 to 2% of all patients who receive these shots actually suffer a serious adverse event. So if you look at the millions of patients that have been vaccinated in the US and across the world, we are in the US talking about millions of patients. So these are millions of patients. The next point is it's a complicated disease which we don't fully understand. Clearly, the spike protein is a toxic protein, and the nanoparticle, unlike with a natural infection, the nanoparticle is distributed to every organ in the body: the brain, the kidney, the heart, the ovary. So it causes severe systemic disease. So a lot of this is mediated by the spike protein, and the spike protein does terrible and awful things. And then obviously you have the nanoparticle and the contents of the nanoparticle, which we just don't really know what they contain. So, millions of patients are suffering from this, and it's a real disease. It's complicated and we don't really understand it. The next point is there's no magic bullet. So there's no single pill, there's no single tablet or intervention which will get rid of the spike protein. What it does primarily is cause immune disequilibrium. So it causes a profound disturbance of the immune system. This includes inflammation. This includes autoantibodies, which are really important in vaccine injured. This includes clotting. So it's a very complex, multifaceted disease. The other thing which we've discovered, and Pierre kind of alluded to, is some patients respond to one therapy, while others to the same therapy seem to have a minimal response. So basically, each patient has to be their own control. We're not going to do randomized controlled trials. And basically, you treat a patient with a limited number of medications and you see what happens. And I think the patient serves as their best control. The other thing is that one kind of escalates therapy. There are a number of therapies that we can try that help to restore the immune system and to try and help the body get rid of the spike protein. What distinguishes vaccine injury from long COVID is it seems that the vaccine injured have a profound preponderance of neurological injuries. So this is somewhat different from long COVID. These people are often debilitated. They have shakes, they have tremors, severe peripheral neuropathy, so they have shooting pains in their legs, anesthesia, lots of peripheral neuropathy features, which are very disabling. And unlike long COVID, which tends to kind of get better with time, many of these patients are 14, 16 months out and still have acute relapses. The treatment is difficult, but I think the answer is that if we treat these people aggressively, it has to be individualized, that many of these patients will get significantly better. We're not saying we can cure this disease, but I think many patients improve significantly, the quality of their life improves, and this is an ongoing process. So this is our first attempt, much like the protocols. This is a starting point. So, this is where we start from, and hopefully we'll get feedback from patients. Many of our therapeutic interventions are based on feedback from patients. So we hope to get feedback from patients and clinicians, and then with time, the protocol will evolve. So this lists our first-line therapies. So on top of it, we have intermittent fasting, which seems somewhat absurd, but fasting is a profoundly important way for the body to get rid of toxic proteins, misfolded proteins, damaged proteins. And the body does it itself by a process called autophagy. And intermittent fasting is a way of activating autophagy to help the body get rid of these bad, toxic, misfolded, and disruptive proteins, and likely including the spike protein. So this doesn't have to be, prolonged fasting. You can do intermittent daily fasting, and there are numerous references to this. The second is ivermectin, and it seems ivermectin works really well with intermittent fasting in order to get rid of the spike. And ivermectin works in a number of mechanisms. As we know, it has anti-inflammatory properties, but also it likely binds the spike protein, so it helps the body to get rid of the spike. Low-dose naltrexone is a really very effective method of dealing with inflammation. It takes about often 2 or 3, 4 weeks for it to actually kick in. We start on a low dose, and surprisingly, so naltrexone is an opiate agonist. It's used for patients with opiate addiction, but at low doses, in the doses we use, it seems to have an effect on the inflammatory process and many of the inflammatory mediators. And many patients get significant relief. And then we add melatonin, obviously, which is really important in terms of a mitochondrial antioxidant. Aspirin, because of its anticoagulant effect. Vitamin C is really important. It's an antioxidant, also feeds the bowel flora. Quercetin, again, a very important antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. Nigella sativa, again, an important herb, which is important anti-inflammatory, antiviral, and antioxidant properties. What we do know, and it's pretty interesting, is that people who get vaccinated, that the vaccine per se changes their bowel flora. Just the act of vaccination causes a profound change in your microbiome. We know there's significant interactions between your microbiome and your immune system. These people get depleted of bifidobacteria, so they require formulations that can restore their microbiome. Obviously, magnesium is very important for a whole host of cellular mechanisms and pathways and omega-3 fatty acids. So this is our first line therapy. We don't recommend every single one of these agents. We start off with a few, and then, we add and subtract depending how the patient responds. But it seems like the basic core is the ivermectin, intermittent fasting, low-dose naltrexone, and melatonin. And basically, as Pierre will tell you, patients really fall into two categories. Those that are ivermectin responsive, who are much easier to treat, and those who are ivermectin resistant and require more of an escalation of therapy. Pierre, do you want to add a few words? Pierre's muted.
Sorry. I was watching the chat, Paul, and it's obviously there's some clinicians on there. There are tons of suggestions. Why isn't this on there? Why isn't that on there? It's not to say those things don't work. It's the same challenge we've had since the beginning, which is when we put together a protocol, you cannot put 75 things. We put the ones that we think have the most mechanistic clinical trials evidence and clinical experience. The trials evidence is sort of the one that many of the different approaches don't have. It's not to say that they don't work. So I just want to tell everyone out there who's asking why that isn't on there. As we all gain more experience and learn from each other, you might see some of these things change. But these are the things that we've had the most experience with. What I find, and the reason why ivermectin, daily fasting, Paul, you covered greatly, and it was interesting. A number of people said, even some vaccinated said, I feel best when I fast, and that actually makes sense to me. But what I find in my practice is ivermectin is the first thing I do with everybody, because I find that in my practice, the majority are ivermectin responders. Now, they're either mild, moderate, or large responders, and sometimes I get resurrections with it. But then I have a subset who really ivermectin doesn't really help them. And then I have to go on and do other things. And then to just go back what you said is that, we've used the term protocol. We have a whole number of things. It's not that we start this thing on everyone. You still need to practice medicine. You still need to use judgment and layer in therapies. And so we sort of put what we thought were the most sensible, safe, with the strongest, sort of mechanistic data to support with what we know of the pathophysiology of what's going on. And so, and if you look at these are all relatively benign. And so this is a good start. And I think the vast majority, if we were to start some amount of these things, or either in sequential manner or even at the same time, I mean, obviously vitamin supplementation is pretty reasonable. Patients will respond. Over to you, Paul.
Yeah, so as Pierre said, I think this is a starting point. You need to start somewhere. It seems like the basic pathophysiology of the vaccine injured is they have immune dysfunction, that the spike protein is causing profound inflammation, immune dysfunction. The production of autoantibodies, which seems to be a particularly interesting or an unusual feature of the vaccine injured. These people develop a host of whole array of diverse autoantibodies directed against all kinds of cell epitopes. And what one needs to do is try and restore the immune system so that to downregulate the immune system so it's not making all of these autoantibodies.
Yeah, Paul, I think we kind of went into some of the therapies, but let's just list really quickly the main mechanisms we think are going on, which are like 5 or 6, right? So, Paul, you talk autoimmunity. Another one is that the immune system is sort of stimulated and there's persistent inflammation, whether it's from monocytes or other aspects of the immune system. Another is that there could be persistent viral presence in some patients. I think those are the patients that respond so robustly to ivermectin. But you have inflammation, autoimmunity, persistent viral presence. You also have clotting, which could be a consequence of some of the inflammation or triggered itself by the spike protein or the breakdowns of the spike protein. And then you also have some reactivation of latent viruses that we're seeing, and then also mast cell activation syndrome. So maybe I shouldn't look at the chat because I'm seeing so many people say so many things, but I think they should wait and hear out some of the other therapies that we are also finding are helpful. This is just sort of a start. That's why it says on the slide, first line therapies. And so, that's what I have to add for now.
We go to the next slide.
Hey, finally.
So this is second and third line therapies. So these are more invasive, and we decided to
next one.
Some of them are, Paul, not all.
Yeah, but basically, to restrict them to those patients who haven't responded that well to first line. So we included hydroxychloroquine because it's a very important immune modulating drug. It's used in patients with autoimmune disease, and it's very safe. These patients can take hydroxychloroquine for SLE for up to 10 years and more.
It's not fun.
And we prefer immune modulating drugs. So these are drugs that modulate the immune system rather than immune suppressive. We prefer not to use drugs which actually suppress the immune system because they then may have a temporary effect. They don't deal with the underlying cause, and then one's going to have a rebound. We think that IV vitamin C is a really important intervention as a second-line therapy. Obviously, it's a little bit more expensive and more logistically more difficult, but we do have patients that do have a quite dramatic response to IV vitamin C. We then have fluvoxamine. As we know, it's been used very well for SARS-CoV-2 and COVID. And then there are a number of nutraceutical preparations that are mitochondrial energy optimizers. We know that the spike protein interferes with mitochondrial function and the ability to make energy. So this seems to be important. And acetylcysteine, again, another antioxidant and improves mitochondrial function. Sulforain, which is a broccoli extract. As we know, broccoli has really important biological properties. And we keep low-dose steroid really down on the list, and we use it really in second-line therapies for a short course in patients who really have not responded well. And then, of course, there's behavioral modification, mindfulness therapy, psychological support, Tai Chi, relaxation therapy, yoga. And what seems to be particularly interesting is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So it's put in second and third line because obviously it's expensive. It's not, they're limited resources. But we've had patients who've had a dramatic response to hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Really, it has rejuvenated them. And surprisingly, it's not the oxygen tension that actually has a therapeutic effect. It's the pressure. So they require a pressure of about 1.5 to 2 atmospheres and appears to be a particularly life-saving and profound effect on quality of care. And then what we did is, apart from the first, second, and third line therapies, is we broke them down into specific clusters of symptomatology. So those patients who have tinnitus, those patients who have small fiber neuropathy, those patients who have brain fog, those patients who predominantly have clotting factors. So the first and second line are really a broad overview of treatment, and then we have specific interventions depending on the specific symptomatology complex that the patients manifest.
Yeah. And then, Paul, that the hyperbaric, right? That's like the classic example of what we were saying is that we've had tremendous success and hearing tremendous success with some patients, others not so much. And then when you get more granular, do you need the higher pressure of like 2.4 atmospheres or 1.3? I was just talking to a colleague today. They have soft shell ones that are doing 1.3, 1.4 atmospheres, and they're reporting great success. So it's not clear when you need a higher pressure, when you need a lower pressure. That also might be first and second line, because I think the soft shells are more available, but for some people it might not work. And so we plan to gain more experience with maybe be more definitive on a hyperbaric protocol. But again, it's not going to help everyone, but boy, has it really turned patients around. And so, but it just speaks back to the complexity of the disease and why we're doing kind of trial and error and empiric approaches.
Yeah, so what I would recommend for vaccine injured folks is to download the protocol, to review the protocol, and then obviously to give it to their clinicians. I mean, so this is primarily a guide for physicians to help treat these patients, because currently they're not receiving any treatment. This is considered a disease that doesn't exist. These people are being shunned. They're not being treated. And I think this is a useful starting point for the treatment of these patients. And, our experience, particularly those of Pierre and, other folks that have been treating these patients, is that many of them actually do show significant improvement. So I think the bottom line is that there is hope, that this is a protocol which will evolve over time, and that this is a disease that we can treat.
Yep.
So that's it, guys. That's their. They shared their protocols because they're doing a process of continuous improvement refinements. Final slide, and they're still talking. Pierre Corey, Paul Merrick is the founder, is the head of the FLCCC Alliance. Dr. Paul Merrick is the second or third most peer-reviewed, published doctor in medical history. Second or third, I can't remember which one. In history, the entire team of the FLCCC Alliance is the most peer-reviewed team in history that have been on this for 2 years. 2 years now. Not only the virus, per se, when it came out as treatments, going, hey, we have treatment protocols here to help people. They've been before the Senate multiple times. Their team includes doctors that are very well known, Dr. Bean, Dr. Robert Malone. Gosh, there's so many. It's like when I get put on the spot sometimes I don't remember, but this is from my heart, guys. I've been doing this because I was fortunate enough to get on the teams from the very beginning. They welcomed me in because I was able to share as not only as a patient, someone who was in pharmaceutical, who was a paramedic, ALS, who understood pharmacology, anatomy and physiology, who understood what drug cocktails were, who understood how to manage signs and symptoms, how to report signs and symptoms, how to battle through this. I did not have a quit in me, and I still don't, and I won't. But the indignity, the injustice, the damn, the amount of people who died that I've had to witness die, it's incredible. And the amount of, I don't know, from doctors and from long haulers who've been gaslighted by these doctors. These guys are heroes. Heroes. They're heroes to the whole damn planet for what they've been trying to accomplish. Because they're battling a monster. They're battling Thanos like I am every single day. Big Pharma, FDA, NIH, Fauci, the whole fucking gang of them. Bill Gates. They're evil as evil can be. And so help me God, they will get their day in court. Or, I mean, if you see the crowds that are out there now, they're out for blood. There are people out for blood for these guys. So I don't know. If I were them, I'd just say, just take me to jail now, and we'll have the trial, because I'd be worried for my own safety of those guys. It's not a threat for me. Last thing I want to do is threaten anybody. Sorry, I'm trying to turn this off. The last thing I want to do is see any more death. I've seen enough. I've seen enough. They've seen enough. It's disgusting how many people these. This is awesome, and I can't control my own little device. This is come on, Apple. I hate Apple. Stop. Well, now they brought in some more people. Hold on here. Now it's Zoom. All right, I'm leaving. I have shared nothing but the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God, since day one of this. I told you guys we all had 99 problems, and COVID was going to be one for a long time. And I meant it, because I seen what was going on behind the scenes. I seen the research teams, some of the brightest, most caring people in the world, lose friends and family because they didn't care. They knew that the fire was before them, and they kept going in to try to save as many people as they possibly can. Me including, and I have survivor's guilt, because I know there's some people I could have saved if I could have just got to them. That's the paramedic in me. That's the first responder. That's the person who knows that early treatment saved lives. And somehow these yahoos managed to control you guys, to manipulate you. And right now we're dealing with the loss of children, right? And so moms, I understand your pain. But if you heard what he just said and you listen, and they're telling you to inject your babies with a toxic spike protein, that can cause all kinds of damage. What is wrong with these devils? Make sense of the madness, because these people and us and the teams, we have done everything in our powers to forewarn you of what was coming. And now it's here. And it's, oh God, is it here? And I get it. No one wants to talk about a subject like this. I have had to, because in my conscience, I could not walk away from the walking wounded. It's what EMS training was all about. You go to scene safety, make sure you're good. And then if there's multiple people, you have to triage these individuals. Stop the bleeding. Stop whatever's going on. Stabilize them to get them to more treatment so they can survive. So early treatment saves lives, has been inbred in any paramedic ever to serve in this damn planet. Any doctor who ever put a pill in a person's mouth knows that early treatments, when a patient is ill, can save a life. How Dr. Fauci ever got his hands and his mouth in front of the American audience the way he has, and known he was lying through his teeth, because we can pull up on the NIH's own website drugs and treatments and protocols that we are sharing, have been sharing, that they knew about from 2005. How did they know about that? Well, because in 2002 was the original outbreak of the coronavirus. Not the original, but our original version of the coronavirus. So from 3, 4, and 5, they were researching the hell out of this, because they wanted to make sure they knew at that time treatments. And all these wonderful drugs were available, and still are to this day. IBM, which has been blocked on social media, and I'll probably get banned and put in jail for another 60 days on Facebook because I shared that name. It's the safest drug on the planet. It's the safest taking aspirin. It's on the WHO's list of essential medications. It won the Nobel Peace Prize 4 years ago. So how they managed to demonize and turn you guys off of just one of many known drugs and treatments that could have saved someone's life is beyond me. And you guys are going to get mad. You're going to see more and more data come out. You are going to see more and more of these doctors. They don't care anymore. Early on, when I was talking and trying to get this word out, everybody go, where are these doctors at, Dan? I'm going, believe me, they're there. But they're not going to share and lose their license or go against the system. The research teams, a lot of them worked directly with the NIH, for crying out loud. They were funded, but if they were to go public and tell you what they were seeing, they were done. So I was a messenger. I have been a messenger through these people who I call myself Forrest Gump. I make fun of it because I was dealing and still dealing with some serious issues with my memory. Part of it was from an accident. The other part was from the virus. It's all documented out there. And to fight to get back to where I could talk, have a two-way conversation, not just words coming in my mouth and not hearing what was coming back because there was a disconnect. Those things are slowly coming back, but that's through cold laser therapy and other treatments that I've been trying to get to help others, because I know other long haulers are going, how the hell can this guy do this? It's 2 years later and he's still, no, I suffered. My lungs at nighttime flare up. I feel like I've smoked cigarettes for 50 years. We talk about aging, long COVID, and it's documented now. In the long hauler rooms we knew early on, people are like, do you feel like you've aged 20 years? And it's true. Like, they got the science now to go behind it, going, yeah, it's speeding up the clock. Why? Because the immune system is fighting. It's fighting for its life like you wouldn't understand. This is why the clotting, the strokes, all these other downstream effects are happening, because you have a battle inside your body going on like you're running a damn track meet. And until they get some treatments to put out the fires, the inflammations that are going in, these viral outbreaks, flare-ups, whatever you want to call it, man, we could talk for 10 hours straight. I could probably, on all the things that we know about long COVID, post-vax injury. Because what was crazy is we seen the vaccine. We knew ahead of time from the original trials, the very original trials, the one where they put 40,000 people in, that they chose the healthiest of the healthiest people. They did. They cherry-picked, right? And then in the trials, they were having mysterious deaths, Bell's palsy, Epstein's virus, EBV, they were reporting all this, and they halted the trials. And if you don't believe me, go to hopenumber4humanity2020.com, and you'll see where all the trials were halted. It was reported in the news. They didn't change a single thing, and then they released the mRNAs. So at best, they knew at the very beginning. At worst, now they've known for at least 8 months through VAERS and other reporting that there's been a big, big problem with what rolled out. And to act like they don't know is insanity. So on top of that, these people are out there. They are the walking wounded. They are sick. They are basically got both feet in the ground at the moment, trying to get out of it, and they're not getting any treatments. There are no protocols. Zero, besides what you're hearing through the FLCCC Alliance or some of the other doctors that are in the know now. And then you're hearing other things that I'd known since the very beginning, that this was a bioweapon. When you have a bioterrorist expert, on your team, and a few other government officials that are working on these teams telling you what you need to know, going, holy shit. And then the media is doing their job of serving their masters by just completely bold-faced lying to you about these things. And then they push these therapeutics that were never used on humans, and now they're sick and not do anything. What in the hell can these jackals be doing to make it any better? Nothing, except have more events going on that keep us off what is going on as a big picture. Food shortages, baby formula shortages, mass shootings. I mean, you name it, it's been 2 years of pure hell for any one of us that if you've gotten through this without some type of traumatic experience happening at least once, then good for you, because I want some of what you got. Maybe it's drinking every day. I can't drink, so I'll just act like I'm drinking. These doctors and these teams are heroes. I'm telling you, and we are living in living history. If we expect to be able to get off the ground and to beat Thanos, to beat the devil that they put out on us, to be able to get past this, to save your mothers and your aunts and your uncles, to understand signs and symptoms. They're having a stroke and they're 22 years old, for crying out loud, it's not normal. If they're having myocarditis, heart inflammation, and they feel like they're having a heart attack at 28 years old, it's not normal. Unless they're doing cocaine and Molly and ecstasy and some other stuff. Like, you have to really push the human body to make the things that are going on happen. It is not normal for children to have black and blue toes, COVID toe. It's not normal for the mental health population of the entire country to shoot 5-10 times higher than what they've normally seen. And then we're not reporting on that because, well, hell, we want to alert the public that we got schizophrenics and people that are basically losing their minds because of the bodies. They're leading to this. When they talk about mast cell activation, what that is an allergic histamine response. It's like having a peanut allergy. And any mother who has a child with a peanut allergy knows it could just be around, it could kill them. Well, I think what's going on, based off of the science that keeps showing up with mast cell activation and some of the other parties that have participated in the protocols that we know about, is they talk about intermittent fasting. That's one. But two, you're going to start hearing more about carnivore diet or straight meat diet, Atkins, keto, anything that's going to stick to a straight protein, keep away all the junk foods, per se, that can cause a histamine response, could probably stop about 80 to 85% of these mast cell activations. This is why these mast cell activation doctors that are jumping on board are helping by saying, all right, you got to get the histamines out. You can either take an antihistamine, which is more drugs to alleviate the signs and symptoms, like you would with an epinephrine pen, like an EpiPen, or you can change your diet. It's the same thing with people who are diabetic, and they're finding that more and more people are becoming diabetic. Well, it's because the body's becoming allergic to glucose, to glycol. So now what we're eating, we're allergic to, we don't even realize it. So we're literally killing ourselves with food that pre-COVID was not toxic to us, but now it is causing a effect to the body to where you are accelerating the inflammation factor in the body. So now you have to start thinking a little more logically of what you're putting into your mouth, which is extremely difficult because everything around the grocery store is designed to fatten you up or, whatever it is. And that is the last thing you need to do when your immune system is compromised. They mentioned immunocompromised so many times, and they're alleviating to what's going on for the bigger point. When the body continues to fight, when the immune system is fighting 24/7, 7 days a week, times month after month after month, you do not have a finite amount of resources. You just don't. Your body does not. You can supplement it, you can boost, but if you're not doing those, you are going to run out of resources. Your T cells are going to be depleted, and now you'll be immunocompromised, which means anything could possibly get you sick. And they know this. I don't know why these doctors don't want to tell you this in any other way than how they say it, but it is a human immunosuppressant virus. It is suppressing the immune response because it is wearing the immune system out. It's like Rocky Balboa and Mr. T going at it. After a while, someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. So if you're not putting out the fire, if you're not finding these protocols, changing your lifestyle habits, your food habits, I'm not going to tell you to get up and exercise, because if you're a long hauler or you're post-vaccine injured, if someone's telling you to jump and do jumping jacks and whatever else, they're trying to put you in the grave. Now, what I mean by that is, if you had a car with 500,000 miles on it, busted tires, no brakes, and I said, hey, let's go take a trip from Florida to California, you'd be like, you're out of your mind. Well, it's the same thing that's going on with your immune system. So you've got a 400,000 mile, 500, 500,000 mile vehicle now that needs new tires, brakes, tune-up, blood transfusion. There's a bunch of things that could happen before you would take that step of, hey, let's go out and exercise. Promise you. Save yourself a stroke or a heart attack. Now, what's going on with the clotting? Well, I told you guys in the very beginning, when you're carrying this virus, it's got a jumping gene. And this is how it's able to evade the immune response a lot of the time. You can go from your RNA to your DNA and back. This is part of the human immunosuppressant part of it. It was already in its little wheel of knives. It's a Swiss Army knife, per se, of abilities to attack. It's just one of its little stealth mechanisms that was built into it. But so your system is chasing the virus around. It's trying to get it, son of a bitch. And it's like, okay, once it realizes we have a big enough immune response, it goes and it hides in soft tissue and the inner lining of your stomach. These are things that we've known 2 years. Inner lining of your stomach, soft tissue, knees, hands. This is why your joints become so depleted where you're like an 80-year-old with rheumatoid arthritis, because it's attacking into joints. It's causing onset arthritis. Instant. You become like lupus patients. I'm hearing autoimmune through the roof. I'm going, they're misdiagnosing you. It's post-viral syndrome. It's from the virus. The virus is attacking your immune system. If you already had some type of immunocompromised issue, it's going to accelerate that. It's like just throwing gasoline on it. These are things we have known. It's not been hidden. Like I've tried to share, but I guess we're catching up. Everyone's finally catching up to, oh God, maybe you were right. Well, no shit. Man, this guy's persistent. Why is he? It's not like I was just going, oh, I hope something happens. The science was the science. The experts were screaming at the top of their lungs, foreboding you, saying, please, just do your own research. And because you're watching TV or whoever your celebrity of the choice was telling you it's safe and effective, go do your part. It was repetitive messaging, peer pressure, stomped with fear, took people out of their own right mindset. They were either forced by their job to get something they didn't want because of their careers, their family. It's an endless amount of reasons why. So I don't look at someone who's had an MRA as, I look at you as a victim like me. If you're suffering long COVID issues or post-COVID vax injured issues. I'm not judging you here. I'm going, we're on the same boat here. The SSS Titanic that they put us on, well, it doesn't matter what class you're in, we're still in the same boat. I'm not your enemy. I'm your friend. I'm the person who's been a messenger the whole time going, listen, I swear to God, on a stack of Bibles, what I'm telling you is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help me God. Please just take a minute to listen and share, like, comment, whatever. And social media has been going, no, block, shadow ban, make sure no one can listen to them. Like, it's insane. I've had 3 TikTok accounts. I've been blocked and banned on YouTube for almost 2 years, but I somehow figured out how to slip another account in, but I haven't really been using it. I have a Rumble account. I guess I should start using that more, but I don't know what else I can do. I'm trying to treat myself, help myself continue to recover so I can help others, because if I'm no good, I'm no good to you guys, and this isn't going anywhere. I said we got 99 problems, and COVID's going to be number 1, and it is. Monkeypox is right behind it. Other opportunistic viruses or pathogens, bacterial, fungi, anything that has been run around normally. Not only people like me, are suffering, but they keep jabbing people. They keep weakening, dampening their immune system. So the entire, remember how they talked about herd immunity? Well, they're doing reverse herd immunity. The more we keep vaccinating the population, the more we are dampening their immune responses, the weaker we're getting as a herd, which gives these other viruses opportunities to get us, to get inside of us, because our shields are coming down. That's what's going on. This is why the UK and Israel are the fire setters. They're the ones that did the most amount of inoculations first. Now the fire's been starting there, and it's carrying over to the other vaccinated countries or RNA synthesized countries. I didn't ask for this. You didn't ask for this. I'm telling you, this is what's going on, and this is what the science keeps showing them. They're not going, that's what we're going to talk about today. Grab a thing like that ESPN commercial and throw a damn dart and go, oh, that's what we're going to talk about today. No, we don't have an option. What we do need to start talking about is early treatments saves lives. Early treatments saves lives. What are your protocols that you're using to treat post-viral syndrome? I don't care what virus you want to throw on it. They're all a virus. So treat it like a virus. Do you have a antibiotic, doxycycline, zithromycin? Throw in a little ivermectin, throw in a zinc. Like, there's cocktails that, boy, you put them in the human body when it needs it most. And it's like bringing in the special forces for the immune system. It'll kick the dog shit out of those viruses. It'll give your natural immune system a break to help you recover. And wow, you just might make it. Instead, the whole bullshit of we only got one thing for you, which is right here, and nothing else, is done. Because any pandemic, one of the 4 pillars of the pandemic has been early treatments. Not vaccination when the virus is running, early treatments while the virus is running. Once you figure it out after it's done its course, if you can create a real vaccine, then you do it. And this is where, I got to write some of these names down so I can remember them. But there was a former Pfizer vax expert. He worked for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, too, our friends. And he's been sharing day one. No, you guys are doing this completely wrong. And he'd been put as the black sheep of the family of the people in his peer group because he was sharing the truth. While everybody else is taking money as hand over fist, he was trying to save lives. Gert, his name's Gert Van something or another. So I might have a small audience thanks to shadow banning these days and whatever, but it's not me trying to get an audience. It's me just sharing a message. I'm faith-based through God, created Hope Number 4 Humanity 2020.com in May of 2020 because we knew what was coming down the pipe, and I knew that Christians, supposedly Christians, there's 2.7 billion of you, would unite around someone who is faith-based, who's been sharing the work through the eyes of God, per se, through the voice and representation of Daniel as a messenger in the Bible, to help his others. But in the narcissistic society that we've become in, where everybody's doing me, and not we, it's been extremely hard, especially when you have friends who will not speak publicly for you, but behind the scenes are constantly hitting you up asking for advice, or hitting you in your DMs going, hey, what about this, or what about that? I'm going, what about sharing publicly? What about being a part of the solution and not the problem? What about donating to the charity, or talking about Hope House and what we're accomplishing? You know, it's going to be a treatment center, and hopefully centers that I can show proof of treatment and recovery, and take that to our Governor DeSantis, because I know a few people in that office, and maybe, just maybe, if we can get this Long Haulers Act approved, and that Long Hauler Health Care Act tied in with Vax Injured, because we're both in the same boats, we're both dealing with a lot of messed up stuff, that we can be a part of a national, at least a state. I'll take the state of Florida as far as a recovery zone. Like, you come to the state of Florida and you show these centers can help treat you. That'd be fine by me, Mike. And then if other states want to follow DeSantis and the rest of them, great, because that's the end of the game, is to help everyone. And if they want to adopt these protocols across the globe, more power to them. Jabbing people to death is not going to be a solution to this problem. We got 99 times 100 problems right now with everything else that's coming downstream, as these guys like to say. The food shortage issues, that insanity. I confirmed it. I reached out to the people I know in the government sectors to go, is this really going on? And, oh yeah. Who's pulling the strings? Who's president? Who's vice president? Who's the governors of the states that are allowing this stuff to happen? Not our governor. Thank you, Jesus. But it's not political. I could care less. R-I-D, R-I-P, to me it's the same thing. If we don't get our clown show together, come together as a people and a society, we are in some serious shit. And they wanted it, whoever they is, because I know that, there's the Great Reset, the Schwab dickheads, the other forums. Oh, I see. See if I locked. It says I have a weak signal. Somehow I think my camera's just gone out, whatever it is.
I'm a lung specialist. I'm an ICU specialist. I've cared for more dying COVID patients than anyone can imagine. They're dying because they can't breathe. They can't breathe. By the time they get me in the ICU, they're already dying. They're almost impossible to recover. Early treatment is key. You know who's dying here? It's our African American and Latino and elderly. It's some of the most disadvantaged and impoverished members of our society. They are dying at higher rates than anyone else. It's the most severe discrepancy I've seen in my medical career. We need to offload the hospitals. We are tired. I cannot keep caring for patients when I know that they could have been saved with earlier treatment, and that drug that will treat them and prevent the hospitalization is ivermectin.
We want to treat these people early, at home, to prevent them progressing to the late phase. That solution is the iMask Plus protocol. This is for the prevention and early treatment of COVID-19. The prevention or prophylaxis protocol is based on ivermectin.
Mountains of data have emerged from many centers and countries around the world showing the miraculous effectiveness of ivermectin. It basically obliterates transmission of this virus. It needs to be immediately adopted systematically, nationally, and globally, period.
Please wear a mask. Masks are a critical component in controlling this pandemic.
But it's part of an approach. You know, you can't just take ivermectin and then it's going to save the world. You have to still, take appropriate measures. You still need to take your zinc. You still need to take your vitamin D, which is such a simple thing to do. Some of them are just so basic. There's just so much data showing if you're vitamin D deficient, it increases your risk of getting COVID, it increases your risk of dying of COVID.
We work at the bedside every day, and for the last 9 months, we have been witnessing this terrible disease, which has taken over 200,000 lives in this country and over 1 million worldwide. We have to act now. We have to act with conviction. We have to act with compassion.